They removed this song from the actual game, you know? Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth or Yakuza 8. When I first heard of this game, that it was going to be bigger, more ambitious, and more content-filled than any other previous title, I was honestly skeptical, and also intimidated. I played them all up to this point, Yakuza, Ishin's, Judgments, and each one is truly filled with an assortment to do. Yakuza 8 is no different and delivers an overwhelming amount of side content to indulge in, so let's get into it. Starting off with the story, in my opinion, the weakest content in the entire game. Now, there's a lot to discuss, and since we don't want to be here forever, I'll point out the most outstanding pieces that I want to address and my thoughts about them. Alright, let's go. As negative as I may be about some later plot areas, the setup to the story is quite intriguing. It builds directly off of Yakuza 7, with the whole crew leading new lives and moving on from the dissolution and the events of 2020. A lot of the early exposition feels unnatural and intriguing in a good way, such as why Ebina is leading the Yakuza rehabilitation project, how did he get Sawashiro out of prison, what happened to Daigo's security company, and of course the most suspicious part, how did Ichiban lose his job? The whole motive of using Akane as the reason for expanding the game to Hawaii was a solid choice, and it also builds anticipation on Ichiban's character as we never hear the coin locker story from Arakawa. A couple chapters pass and we're introduced to a strong cast of Hawaiian personalities like Tomizawa, Chitose, Yamai, and this guy called Suzuki. Sounds familiar. Now, Kiryu's existence in this game is a mixed bag for me that I'll discuss more in the next section for story purposes. It makes sense that he's in Hawaii, as after how big of a joke the Daidoji were at keeping Kiryu's identity unknown during Gaiden, it's believable they assigned him overseas to search for Akane. That being said, I wish they teased his cancer or his decaying state in Gaiden at least a bit, as it was already a melancholic game, and I feel like it would have fit better in anticipation for Kiryu's next appearance. The whole cancer reveal in Yakuza 8 was really sudden, at least for me, and only relevant during cutscenes when tension building was necessary. Moving on to Chapter 4, this was the best dungeon and faction introduction. The Barracudas are a rough mafia collective that aren't afraid to kill even in public. They're more overt and less formal, which makes for their appearance to be much more intimidating. The next 3 chapters are more or less also the same as Chapter 4, where it's focused on an enemy faction in pursuit of Akane. I didn't mind this sequence of events as it built upon Hawaii's internal underground networks. I would only add some extra lore regarding Akane maybe between each chapter. You spend roughly half the game with the main objective searching for one woman, and I did find it a bit annoying that Dwight, Wong, and Yamai literally had no idea why they're looking for her besides for power reasons and because Bryce ordered them to. Chapter 8 then splits the cast in half with 5 characters in each party. Now, in my opinion, Junjihan and Zhao shouldn't have returned as party members as they felt forced into the story, especially Jun. He literally comes to Hawaii to balance out the parties 1 chapter before the finale. This is how I imagine the playable roster should have been. For Japan, send Kiryu back in Chapter 8, but keep the whole Ijincho crew in Yokohama. This way, Kiryu gets to interact with all of Ichiban's friends. Nanba, Adachi, Saiko, and Shonghai would be the party members, where Junjihan and Zhao would appear, but they wouldn't be playable. Make them like supporting characters, similar to Eiji and Yamai during the story fights. As for Ichiban's group, I would have liked if it were a complete cast of new characters. Tomizawa and Chitose are already great additions. As for the remaining 2, it should have been Hanawa and Wongto. Hanawa could have had a similar moveset to Junjihan as he is a technical fighter, whereas Wong could have replaced Adachi as a tank. Hanawa and Wong both also have a motive for going against Palikana and are already involved with Ichiban's party, so it's a better use of them than whatever happens in Chapter 9. Fast forward a bit, and in Chapter 11, Eiji's true nature is revealed. Now, I actually enjoyed this reveal and his irredeemable behavior and betrayal, until he actually gets redeemed. It's a bit tied into what I want to address about Ichiban's character in this game, so I will save it for that section. But for story purposes, Eiji was a good foil and exploitation of Ichiban's weakness. I'm just confused about the timeline of events of his appearance near the end of the game, going forward from Chapter 11, as he kidnaps Lani, gives her to Dwight, and then disappears until the epilogue, in which he's pretty unrecognizable. After playing the game 2 times, the ending sequence of cutscenes are just too close together without a proper time skip notification, so when you see AG, who looks like a homeless Yagami, you have no idea who you're looking at. And finally, Chapter 12, the dedicated homage chapter to the Yakuza Legends. Presentation was amazing, and it was a nice send-off to the cast of old. Oh, and also, you know, we're in the 2020s when VTubers are canceling criminals. Seems a bit silly, but it's a pretty real concept now. Alright, so let's skip to the finale now. The whole cast comes together before splitting up once again to take down the 2 big bads. It's also at this point that Kiryu is finally called out by the Daidoji for his disobedience. Once again. Man, they really have to make up their mind on what they want to do with this faction. Either way, the endgame climax is epic as can be expected. I would, however, swap the party's destination. Kiryu should have gone to Hawaii, and Ichiban to Kamurocho. Kiryu's developed a parallel between Haruka and Lani, and so going against Bryce, the mastermind behind the hunt, seems more thematic. As for Ichiban, Ebina is his half-brother, and if anything it ties into how his final fights are typically against people that have relation to him. Also, I felt that Kasuga would have had a better speech in convincing Ebina than Kiryu in regards to his ambition. For the epilogue, I am genuinely surprised we did not get a scene of Akane or Kasuga talking together, and if she would remain in Palikana or come live with Ichiban in Ijincho. I'm also surprised that they made Ichiban and Saiko's romance canon as well, considering they avoided main story romance for so long since Kiwami 2. But that's it about the story, no more. I already said a ton, and despite my views, it was still fun to go through. I understand the future vision that RGG is trying to paint here, where they're trying to branch the story away from Japan and Yakuza dependencies, make the game more dynamic in its environments, factions, and that will in conjunction create more interesting stories. I think long gone are the days of Yakuza such as the Tojo and Omi, and so they really are trying to kind of branch out to either new countries or to new factions that they can create and distill these new conflicts. Infinite Wealth brought back many returning characters from many previous titles. Whether it's for the main story or lifelinks, the compilation of who's mentioned and who shows up is a very large cast. Now I only want to talk about the new ones alongside our 2 protagonists, so let's begin. Ichiban is first because there's quite some to say. In this game it felt that Kasuga was always losing. That's the best way I can describe it. I get that his character and development is built off of overcoming challenges where everything is hopeless, but he's stronger than he was in Yakuza 7. He's a leader who has a good read on people's potential. Now, I don't want to mistake my complaint of Ichiban losing to no character development. I'm fine with him the way he is. He's been developed. It's just that the game makes him make the wrong decisions because of the trait that he has of overcoming challenges, such as messing up his proposal to Saiko or losing Lani to Eiji. Now speaking of Eiji, what I wanted to get at is Ichiban's redemption of characters because of his judgment. What enhances his personality is that Ichiban is able to see the good despite all the bad someone's done. However, for Eiji, I felt like it should have been the opposite. Eiji shouldn't have been redeemed, and Ichiban should have felt betrayed that his trust was misplaced. Unlike in Yakuza 7, it would have been a good contrast for this ending to be more darker, in which Ichiban cannot save everybody, and that there are consequences for his actions. It would have perhaps developed him down a different path, but those are my final closing thoughts on Ichiban for this game. Next up is Taichi Suzuki, the world's worst incognito. The game acts as a concluding tale of Kiryu's legacy, and it's honestly very well done. I wish a couple more characters got lifelinks, but I'm happy with what we got. Now the reason why I called Kiryu a mixed bag earlier is because Kiryu has always been the character that can make miracles happen. If the game wants him to defeat anything, then he will. I was a bit worried since he was the first party member that he would vastly overpower and overshadow Ichiban's character. Thankfully, it's not too noticeable since the enemies and factions in this game aren't unbelievable in strength. The problems I actually have here are more micro, like where the hell are my Daidoji tools, and why doesn't Kiryu have Firefly, Spider, Hornet, or Serpent? I mean, maybe it would have broken the game, but it's not like he just left them back in Japan. I also would have wanted a bit of insight as to what Kiryu was doing for the past 3 years since Gaiden as well. He was obviously in Hawaii before, since he was departing for it at the end of Gaiden to deliver Yumi's ring, and we know that he was working in the nuclear waste business as well. Regardless, the dynamic between Kiryu and Ichiban in the game is quite interesting. I was expecting Kiryu to be a mentor type of role to Ichiban, as they were both together early on in the game, and I thought this was going to be a dual protagonist type of presentation, but man, was I wrong. It's actually the opposite, which was quite intriguing. Kiryu is used to fighting his battles alone as well as his internal struggles, but Ichiban and all his friends are constantly encouraging him to relax and enjoy life. It's certainly a unique atmosphere that Infinite Wealth creates for Kiryu, and it brings out a interesting perspective and position for him that he hasn't really been able to put himself in all his past games, as he is always constantly by himself as well as fighting by himself. Anyways, that's all I have to say about our protagonist. Let's quickly talk about some of our new side characters and move on. Tomizawa is first, the most standout character. He's a simple victim from Hawaii's underground, and honestly, sometimes simple is best. He's fully developed and well integrated into the main story's conflict, but personally, I would have liked him even more if he killed Dwight in Chapter 4, as it would have shown the difference in culture when it comes to revenge or holding grudges. He would have been more of like a dark horse type of addition to Ichiban's party, who's not really afraid to get his hands dirty. Either way though, he's a great addition to Ichiban's friend group that fits in organically with the rest of the team. Chitose is a much more story-relevant character, and I would say is probably the most involved character in the entire main story. She is the Tatara channel, heiress to a powerful family, and a master betrayer. She alluded to be hiding a lot throughout the game because, well, she is. And while she was a fun party member to play as and learn about, I found it a bit awkward that she was accepted into the group so easily. She ruined Ichiban, Nanba, and Adachi's careers, drugged Ichiban, lied about Eiji, and is pretty much responsible for Hanawa and Wong's deaths. Rest in peace, Hanawa. Wong, ain't nobody care about you, man. Character aside though, her existence felt contrived, as she was pretty much the foundation connecting everything together, both problem and solution. The casino investigation was only possible because Chitose dropped her family name. Tatara had to have been Chitose for her to be personally connected to Eiji for blackmail, despite after leaving, a random person is able to control Tatara. And the most outrageous for me was that the only way Bryce's operation was destroyed is because Chitose called in her dad. Behind her story writing, I do think her character is a bit interesting and can be explored more, but since the epilogue seems to have written her off as returning to her family, I believe she was curated mainly for story pushing purposes. Finally, we have Yamai. Now this guy is a wild card. I honestly can't tell if he's playing the same game as me. Yamai has no personal stake in the main story. He's not interested in the main story either. He's just here to get as many boss fights in with you as possible. Honestly, I'm not quite sure what was the point of him, since the whole motive of getting to Akane was to leverage power in Hawaii, similar to Wong, but he was a good icebreaker and unexpected intervention that broke up the typical progression expectations in the main story. Since he's back in Japan and has settled his accounts, I am hoping he returns as a party member, as he's quite charismatic. And now we get to the fun part, everything else. Well, first of all, this game doesn't just have one, but two completion lists. That's right, crazy stuff. Major systems aside, like Sujimon League and Dondoko Island, it's not that overwhelming. It really is just your typical minigames like gambling, arcade games, karaoke, certifications, and sports. There are new minigames such as Crazy Delivery, Sicko Snap, and Mismatch, which is hilarious by the way. So it's not like there's nothing new in the form of smaller minigames. Also, for some reason, there's 4 flipping mahjong parlors. Just thought I'd add that. Moving on, let's talk about combat. It's very similar to Yakuza 7 in both the form of presentation and jobs. There are more environmental interactions, like picking up items around you to use as an attack, rather than just kicking them, as well as proximity bonuses and combo attacks that you can pull off if you launch attacks close to your allies and enemies. Overall, it's mainly betterments to the auto attack function, which I liked since I am a physical basic attack enjoyer in all turn-based games. Next up, I will discuss the bond system. It's pretty content filled this time around. There are many categories of interactions between the cast in this game. There are table talks that happen in restaurants, character-specific walk and talks, party chats around town, and drink links at the main bars. There is a ton of dialogue to go around between individual members in each party, with their respective protagonists and collectively as a group. Honestly, this feels like one of the focal offerings of the game, as it's very detailed and even referential to past games. Now finally, before we get to the big systems, let's discuss Kiryu's list, starting in Chapter 8. So Kiryu gets his own mini menu of stuff to do that's mainly a recollection of all the past games. It's a very rewarding experience for players like myself who have played all the games up to this point. The memoir section did a really good job of tackling most major landmarks and key individuals that Kiryu encountered across his adventures. The game also did a good job of keeping Kiryu's side content self-contained, so it didn't feel like it got in the way of the main story, as all this new content was being introduced mid-game in Chapter 8. Alright, now I can talk about the Sujimon League. So you completed the Suji decks in the last game, well, now you can catch them, legally of course, and have them fight very violent battles for you, which is all very legal. Although seemingly overwhelming as a main function, it's actually a pretty rudimentary elemental weakness system that's mostly poised on how leveled your Sujimon are. Now I, of course, just used the DLC units since I paid to win in a single player game, so I didn't really struggle that much, but it's more so filling out the dossier that's the real adventure. The League has its own separate story and naturally is a parody of a certain franchise that shan't be named unless my channel remain. And lastly, we have Dondoko Island, which is the obligatory "how is this not a standalone game inside of a game" game. This mode is a resort simulator where you invite guests to an island to make money, and then you use that money to make your island more sleazy. It can be pretty grindy, and it does suck that the entire mode resets in NG+, but I mean, who would do such a thing, right? Anyways, most of this mode is just a learning curve as you're managing so many resources and unique currencies to the island that eventually you start scaling, so you can just buy out most crafted furnishings instead of making them. Oh, and also you can visit other people's islands if you want. It's all canon and part of the Dondoko multiverse. Right then. And now it's almost time to close off this look back. Just a couple minor notes that didn't fit in with the many categories of walls of text that I was writing in this script. 1. Sub-stories were high quality as usual, however, it would have been nice for party members to be involved in some of them. Also, Kiryu should have gotten some sub-stories, and no, I'm not counting the small memoir ones. Next, the Suji decks becomes very hard to fill out in the endgame, as low-level random encounters are replaced with higher-level variants, making missed low-level Sujimon harder to record. And finally, this is inconsequential to most, but why do Aloha links reset in NG+? Yes, I am salty that this reset, and yes, I am crazy for doing it twice. And that's all I have to say for this extremely long look back. This game took me quite a long time to beat, but it gave me a good break to start other titles in preparation for the summer, because that's how quick this year is going by. Well then, ahui ho!